battled lines that have indeed been drawn over net neutrality. The fight, which started with India's top telecom operator Airtel's zero plan, has now caught the attention of both regulators, the government, and of course you and I, the consumers. Not just that, ET now learns that India's monopoly watchdog, the Competition Commission of India, is likely to seek an explanation from industry regulator TRAI, which has come out with a consultation paper taking a lenient view on telecom operators.
In fact, the debate over net neutrality has split the telecom ecosystem right in the middle, with telcos on one side and the government and telecom subscribers on the other. Bharti's CEO Gopal Vittal has strongly defended the company's new plan, saying that the debate over the Airtel Zero plan is completely misplaced. But the government is not taking any chances, with Minister Shankar Prasad promising a fair deal for all customers. So what's the fuss all about? That's our top story on Business Tonight.
The net neutrality debate is well and truly on fire in India. That's because high-profile lobbying by major telecom companies is threatening to end free access to internet without any discrimination. The deadline for internet users across the country to send their views to the regulator, TRAI, ends in 10 days from now. Over 1 lakh emails have been sent so far to TRAI in protest against the new rules on net neutrality. And voices in support are only growing louder.
Do we want to divide the internet per se? I personally believe that internet is a common heritage for humanity per se.
I do not accept the argument whether it's internet.org or Airtel or Vodafone playing Big Brother. It is not for them to play Big Brother. It is for consumers to determine success or failure on the internet.
We should be absolutely clear that the net has to be neutral, and they cannot create any unfairness in the net by allowing different people to run strange schemes where somebody gets the net free. If it's free, it should be free for everybody, for everything.
But what exactly is the issue all about? This is how the internet exists as of today. All of us have access to all kinds of websites with internet service providers facilitating it for a fee. And this is what it will look like if service providers have their way and start charging companies like YouTube or Netflix as they consume more bandwidth, with the load of the extra charges being eventually passed on to us, the consumers. Still, not everybody is intent on protecting the neutrality of the internet.
Let me ask you, in the TV world, right, you have your distribution side and you have your content side. Do people say that just because you sold subscriptions to the end customer, you can't do back-end agreements with content providers for providing content on your network? Of course, you'd laugh at me if I said that, right?
But this is a contrast to digital inclusion, which has been the primary theme of the Modi government's vision of creating a digital India.
Net, to become truly global, must have integral link with the local. And when we talk of digital inclusion, it's equally important. It must be available to those who are underprivileged and all the margins.
The telecom minister has certainly stuck to his guns. But how exactly will the vision of a democratic internet be converted into reality? After all, the internet is of the people, by the people, and of course, for the people. Krishna Kumar, ET Now, Mumbai.
We've got to get you the voices that matter on this debate, because this debate impacts you, me, each one of us. And we're joined by a very, very special panel right here on ET Now. Rajan Mathews, who represents the telecom operator, Sanjay Kapoor, who's been there, done that, knows the cost of an operation, the former CEO of Bharti Airtel, and of course, Gursimran Khamba, the co-founder of AIB, the application that actually started this entire debate just late last evening. But let's begin with you, Mr. Mathews, because you are the defendant here of sorts. Why are you opposed to net neutrality? I can't be more blunt than this.
So first of all, it's totally untrue that the operators are against net neutrality. What we would like to have a discussion around is about net equality, not net neutrality, because I think it skews the conversations. We believe in transparency. We believe that all of the customers who sign on for data services should have transparent access, and that we are fully committed to giving them the best experience that we possibly can. And we are not interested in throttling back anything. Of course, net neutrality means that we are responsible for the health of our networks. Other than that, we want to make sure that everybody has equal access to the internet.
All right, so the whole debate actually shifts to net equality and not net neutrality. But Sanjay, if I may ask you, which side of this entire debate are you on? You've been a telecom operator. They're getting a fair amount of stick on this one.
Both sides of the fence. I've built India's largest network over a 15-year time period, and now playing a role on the devices and OTT ecosystem side of things. All I can say is we need to first and foremost bring about complete clarity on what net neutrality means. I think there is a different interpretation of net neutrality with different players in the ecosystem, and I think to set the record straight, first and foremost, the regulator has to dive in and bring a commonality of definition for everybody. The moment there's a common definition, I think then starts the work to say we need to bring in net neutrality. I'm a believer that in the internet world today the consumer power is so high, and the choice about what a consumer wants to consume in terms of service, in terms of app, can never be taken away from him, because it is not like the previous world which evolved around voice and SMS. It is a world of apps and services where a consumer lives his personal life and professional life around applications and services that he chooses from a gamut of millions of services that are available across the globe. And once he does that, I think it is his decision finally that should prevail, and that can only happen when everybody is treated equals and the consumer has the choice to decide what he wants.
Sanjay, good to see you take a position in variance with that of the telecom operators. But, Khamba, let's come to you. Genesis of this debate has been the Airtel Zero plan. What's wrong with it?
I think the Airtel Zero plan in particular is one of those things which is, it's very easy for a telecom operator to sort of do a bait and switch. That is essentially the problem. It's sort of like putting a gun to your head and saying, trust me, I won't shoot. It's easy to sort of put it from the point of view of that it's a marketing exercise, but at the end of the day, it is still providing a big, X customer or X company some sort of preferential treatment, which, say for example, for someone like me or my company, which is like a new startup within the video domain, my pockets aren't deep as, say for example, one of the bigger competitors that we might eventually have in the video space. So that automatically, if X company signs up for something like an Airtel Zero, either I am also forced to sign up for a service like that so that I end up competing. So on some level, it is still preferential treatment to people who have bigger pockets, and it's essentially trying to say that you're forcing a ex-consumer to get on the bandwagon as well. So I think it's one of those things which is really tricky, but it's also something that suits corporations with bigger pockets a lot more, and which sort of goes against the entire principle of the internet. Like if this was a situation 10 or 15 years ago, you would not have websites like Facebook, sort of disrupt the entire social network ecosystem. And the irony is that even companies like Facebook right now, through some of their services, are sort of have been in similar arrangements like what is happening with Airtel Zero. So it's in a state of flux, the entire situation right now as well.
Rajan Mathews, comment on that. Aren't such agreements discriminatory in nature because you pick the partners based on a commercial arrangement, right? Aren't they infringing the very freedom of the internet?
Absolutely not, because again, what we are saying is that you have absolutely free access to the internet. Nobody is blocking you, nobody is throttling you back, nobody is trying to do anything. Once you get onto the internet, the type of applications, the type of services that you enjoy in the internet are free for all. Some of the content providers charge you, some provide it free, and there are various arrangements that can be made. As long as the customer's experience is good, and as long as the customer is not disenfranchised through any of those arrangements, I don't see how entering into those agreements, if it is inured to the benefit of the consumer, is prohibitive or inappropriate, and that's exactly what Airtel has done.
Sanjay, if I may throw this question to you, your former company and you are at variance on this entire debate. Airtel says this is a plan meant to drive internet penetration. They claim other telecom operators globally do this. This is a global practice. What is then wrong with it?
It will be very incorrect and out of place for me to get into a discussion on a particular plan by a particular company. I don't want to be getting there. But I think on a very principled basis, what I believe is that operators want to extract, given a very high price of spectrum that they've recently paid, their pound of flesh from what happens in the ecosystem. Of course, they should make money. I think the issue here lies on the pricing that is there today for data in the country. I think that is the crux of this debate. And if there was a right pricing being charged by the operators in the marketplace, they would not be finding other ways to either circumvent or stop or bring in other practices which probably do not give a net neutrality feeling to the consumer and the ecosystem going forward. So I think they need to set their prices right, and if they get their prices right, and if the data prices in this country need to be higher, they need to be higher. And after that, the consumer chooses whether he wants to do voice on it, whether he wants to do an X application or a Y application, an X service or a Y service. I think that belongs to the consumer. So I personally think it's more of a pricing issue, and once the operators get their due on the right pricing to be charged, probably this debate will become lesser effective and volatile than it is today.
That's a fair point, and you're actually being very candid here, considering you've done those operations for a while. Rajan Mathews, like Sanjay is saying there, why can't operators raise data tariffs instead? I mean, why this whole debate? If they're so short of cash, go ahead and do what is prudent, raise tariffs.
No, because first of all, there is a certain limit that can be done in terms of the rate of the data prices, because it goes against the national policy. The Honorable Prime Minister has made it very clear that he wants affordability and he wants the network to be ubiquitous, go down to the Gram Panchayat level. So we are trying to ensure that we have adequate resources to, one, make it affordable, and to two, make sure that everybody who wants to have internet access has it. And there are 1 billion people that have no internet access, and so we have to be concerned with that as well.
Okay, I'm not sure we're going to get consensus on that one. So what we need is regulation. Khamba, come in on that. A clear policy that thwarts any anti-competitive practices. You know, this business of potentially an operator tying up with a content provider and slowing down rival apps or rival content providers, that needs to be thwarted. If we have that, would you be fine? Does that, in the spirit, address your concerns on net neutrality?
I think you need regulation to ensure, like I said already, that there is no preferential treatment to X app or X website, and sort of going against that essentially means that you're taking away the one principle from the internet, which is that every player is equal. It's a great sort of leveler, whether you're a big corporation or whether you're an amateur guy on the street trying to make a video and upload it somewhere. So I think any regulation that comes in, and obviously this is a long drawn process, any regulation that comes in should not end up should not end up in a space where you're ending up blocking or banning or thwarting. I think that's a longer dialogue that needs to happen in terms of how you regulate it. The problem right now in particular, which is the immediate problem, was also that the consultation time that the TRAI put up, they essentially put up the paper on 27th of March, and then they expected everybody to sort of respond by 24th of April. I think a bigger problem, and the fuss, as you put it so eloquently up top, is also to do with the fact that there is such little time for everybody to wrap their head around it, that telecom companies would be able to pull off some sort of regulation without anybody even getting a chance to respond properly. So I think in this particular case, it was really important to get the word out that this is a potential change, and then at least have some sort of a dialogue to see what kind of regulation, if at all, you want to enact regarding the internet. But definitely not in its current form as they're proposing it based on the consultation paper.
So Sanjay, what's the solution here? Can we have potential regulation that thwarts anti-competitive practices that telcos might want to get into? Is there a middle path in this? That's what I'm trying to find out. Is there a middle path in this, or is it all black or white? You're either for net neutrality or you're against. Is there a middle path in this?
So look, one thing for certain, you cannot kill the innovative approaches in the market. There'll be innovations that will happen. I think leaving the room for innovations is absolutely paramount. Otherwise, the industry becomes completely commoditized. I think that will be unfair for operators who want to think outside the box and give more choices to consumers. So I think room for that should be allowed. But once the definition of net neutrality is frozen, the government then has to make sure that we at least in the ballpark toe the line, so that we do not deprive our consumers of the practices that we ourselves collectively have set in motion. I think once we set those practices, those rules in motion, we need to stick by those rules and then make sure everybody is compliant.
All right, stick by rules. But Rajan Mathews, if I may just point out the criticism that's really coming the way of telecom operators, and the discourse in social media at least seems to indicate that no one is willing to trust the telecom operators. They almost seem to be behaving like the big brother.
If you're talking about Big Brother, I think you should be looking at the Googles of the world in terms of the massive amount of information they have at their fingerprint, given voluntarily by customers to them, which they mine and use for marketing their products and charging customers. I would be surprised if Google allows everybody to be #1 on their search engine without paying a price. So I'm not clear who is the Big Brother in this particular situation.
Khamba, one of the reasons why I can watch your videos is because I can watch it on my mobile phone all the time. And so fear of telecom, Big Brother, unfounded, because after all, industry has been pro-consumer so far.
I know fear-mongering is a term which is used a lot because, every time you use a phrase like fear-mongering, it's meant to put the other side on the defensive, saying, but why are you sort of so afraid of us? But at the same time, there is no guarantee, right? And at the end of the day, at the core of the arguments that they're trying to pass, it is still on a very core principle level, it violates basic neutrality in terms of what the internet is meant for and what the internet is supposed to be. So if you're planning on saying that, okay, I'm going to split it in different chunks, but hey, trust me, in the future, I'm only doing this for your good, or I'm only doing this and because I want to provide you some services which I find essential for cheaper. I might not find them essential at all. So I don't think you can take that at face value. And on some level, it is essential to sort of counter that argument because it is not backed up with the kind of facts that you're talking about in terms of them being super pro-consumer. I mean, we have, just look at Twitter. You have enough. People are also, I think, on some level angry with telecom companies. More than that, it's also because on a day-to-day level, everything that you do with the telecom company is a struggle. Like you expect to pay for 3G speeds, but you don't get 3G speeds. I'm right now talking only as like a individual consumer complaint, not even about a net neutrality thing. So I think on a principle, it is also harder for an individual to trust telecom companies simply because on a day-to-day level, they are mostly quite frustrated with the kind of thing that they have to deal with when it comes to a telecom consumer. Everything from getting billed higher and not getting enough speed. So I think it's sort of that the frustration sort of also and the lack of trust also percolates from their day-to-day experience with the company.
Sanjay, let you have the last word in this since you're the neutral, or actually you can't even say you're neutral, you've taken a position as well, but let you have the last word in this one. Could this backlash hurt the big boys of Indian telecom? The kind of backlash that we've seen from consumers and from, netizens is unprecedented. Could this hurt the big daddies of Indian telecom?
We all know that the power of the connected world is so intense that it has the ability, and it has shown the ability to even topple governments, regimes, and brands are a very small thing compared to that. I personally think everybody is vulnerable if the consumer's not fancying your brand, not experiencing, not getting what he wants out of your brand, and therefore the vulnerability goes up, especially in a connected world like us, because the timelines tend to squeeze on gaining a peak on your product and gaining a trough on your product. So I would be very, very scared of any backlash and actually do things which are, probably in sync with what the market wants. I obviously don't mean that each time a consumer will come and ask for something that is not warranted or that is not appropriate and you will succumb to that. But I think not to hear the voice of the consumer and not to take your decisions based on what the consumer wants in a connected world which has lots of choices for the consumer is daft in this day and age.
Telcos, you better watch out, says Sanjay Kapoor. Sanjay, Rajan and Khamba, thanks so much for joining in with that perspective on the big debate on net neutrality. I'm sure we'll have lots more to debate on this particular issue as the government and the TRAI finalizes a regulation roadmap.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.